Suspended ANC Secretary-General Ace Magashule and businessman Edwin Sodi have launched applications which attack the strength of the evidence against them. Magashule wants the court to compel the NPA to reveal exactly which witnesses have implicated him in wrongdoing. Joining us now to discuss the implications of this application is News 24 senior legal reporter Karyn Maughan. Karyn, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us and a warm welcome to The Full View.
Having me.
Does Ace Magashule and Edwin Sodi have a legal standing to launch this application?
Well, essentially what they are both arguing is that the NPA's conduct in relation to this asbestos alleged scam matter, amounts to a violation of their fair trial rights for two different reasons. In Edwin Sodi's case, he is making the case that he went and gave evidence before the Zondo Commission of Inquiry with the explicit understanding that no aspect of his evidence could be used against him in criminal proceedings, which is what he is alleging has happened to him in respect of the NPA's case against him. So he's bringing a very different case to Ace Magashule, who's essentially saying, as an accused person, he has a right to know what the case is against him before he answers to it. And he's essentially saying that while he has the docket provided to him by the state, he cannot see any evidence prima facie that implicates him in wrongdoing, and therefore he wants to know who the witnesses are against him so that he can make a more full throttle decision about whether or not, how he should plead to this case, and indeed if there is in fact a case against him.
Well, the contestation and the argument that this case was politically motivated and was spearheaded by his detractors within the party and elsewhere to dawn his his political career is one matter that he's always been raising all these months. But then he argued that this case against him has not been disclosed to him and his legal representatives, and that the intended trial will ex facie, which means that on the face of it will be unfair and a violation of his rights. Does he have a point?
I think, the NPA is under a lot of pressure here because, according to him, his lawyers have gone through the docket of evidence that was provided to them, because that's under criminal law, that's what you need to do. An accused person has to know what statements are made, how he defends himself. That is a normal part of the criminal justice process. He says his lawyers have gone through that docket and there's absolutely nothing that implicates him in the crimes for which he has been charged under PRECA, which is corruption legislation. So he's essentially saying that the state needs to disclose any potential evidence that they're not disclosing, because he's saying, in light of this fact, he's led to believe that maybe they have evidence that they're not disclosing. And indeed, if there is no such evidence, the court needs to rule that there's not a prima facie case against him that's capable of sustaining a successful prosecution. And if the NPA doesn't come to, the NPA now has to respond in the next few days. It missed its deadline to file a response today. It said it wasn't going to be able to do so. But the pressure now is on the NPA to counter those claims and to really give the court assurance that indeed there is a prima facie case against Ace Magashule. If it doesn't do so, there is a real instance that, there's a real possibility that the court will potentially make negative inferences or, potentially compel the state to disclose those witnesses unless the NPA can give very good reasons for why it doesn't want to do so.
And having studied the case closely, Karyn, what's your analysis and observation of the kind of evidence that has been adduced before the court against Ace Magashule? Because he contends and argues that during his time as a Premier of the Free State, there was no evidence whatsoever linking him to the case. And, he was not even remotely nearer the initiation and the adjudication of the tenders.
Well, what makes things more complicated is that the state came out in the beginning of this case and said that his PA was in fact a state witness. It now emerges that they said so without even having a sworn statement from her, that they appear to have been relying on the statement that she gave to the Zondo inquiry, which is not admissible as evidence in a criminal trial. So, Ace Magashule is also saying the court needs to make a declaration over the fact that he contends she was never a state witness. And he's saying that the state is guilty of gross prosecutorial misconduct in terms of its representation in relation to her. So At this stage, we don't know. There may be a lot of confusion. The state may come with evidence to explain what exactly has happened here. But it certainly doesn't look very good for the NPA at the moment. And I think they are under a great deal of pressure to assure the court that they had a prima facie case, and indeed to assure the public. Because as you rightly point out, if this case collapses against Ace Magashule, the implications for the credibility of the NPA are going to be profound.
All right, Karyn Maughan, lovely chatting to you. Thank you so much for your analysis. That was Karyn Maughan, a senior legal reporter at News 20.